You were never talking to who you thought you were. There's a very specific kind of fear that doesn't come from screams, or shadows, or things jumping out in the dark. It comes from realizing that everything felt normal, right up until it wasn't. This isn't a story about monsters hiding in alleys or ghosts knocking on doors at midnight. This is a story about how easy it is to trust someone you've never met, how comfortable we've become talking to strangers through a screen, and how dangerous it can be when someone decides to use that trust against you. Last spring, I downloaded a dating app. Not because I was optimistic. Not because I believed it would change my life. Mostly because I was lonely in a quiet, boring way. The kind that creeps in slowly and convinces you that doing something is better than doing nothing. That's when I matched with her. Her name was Rachel. At least, that's what the app told me. Rachel's profile didn't stand out. And that's important. There was nothing extreme about it. No overly edited photos. No dramatic poses. No captions trying too hard to sound mysterious or deep. Just a normal-looking woman. A cute brunette. A friendly smile. Photos that looked like they were taken by friends, not staged for strangers. Her bio said she worked in marketing. She liked hiking. She preferred quiet nights instead of parties. It felt believable. It felt safe. We started talking, and from the beginning, nothing felt off. No weird questions. No rushed flirting. No pressure to meet immediately or move the conversation somewhere private. She didn't push for my number. She didn't send late-night messages. She didn't cross boundaries. Honestly, it felt refreshing. After a few days, then a week, the conversation just flowed. The kind of talking that makes time pass faster than you realize. The kind that slowly builds familiarity. Eventually, we decided to meet. Nothing big. Just dinner. A Wednesday night. Something casual. She picked the restaurant. It was in a quieter part of town, away from the usual crowds. A little nicer than the places I normally go, but not fancy enough to feel intimidating. I remember thinking it was a good sign. Thoughtful. I got there a few minutes early and texted her that I'd parked. No response. I didn't think much of it at first. I waited by the entrance, scrolling through my phone, checking the time every few minutes. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. I told myself she might be stuck in traffic. Or running late. Things happen. But slowly, that familiar feeling started creeping in. The one where you realize people around you are beginning to notice you standing there alone. The hostess asked if I wanted to be seated. I told her I was waiting for someone. She checked the list. No one named Rachel has checked in. That's when embarrassment started turning into something else. 30 minutes in, I decided I was done. I told myself I'd leave, laugh it off, and move on. And that's when he walked in. He didn't scan the room. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight toward me like he already knew exactly where I'd be. Mid-40s. Scruffy. Heavy set. A black hoodie pulled low. He looked at me and said my name. That moment, that exact moment, something shifted inside me. Because I hadn't told anyone my name. He said he was Rachel's brother. Said she wasn't feeling well. Said she didn't want to cancel. Said she asked him to come get me and bring me back to their place since it was close. Every sentence sounded reasonable on its own. Together they felt wrong. I asked why she didn't text me. He said her phone died. I asked where she lived. He said it would be easier if he showed me. I told him I'd walk. He said the sidewalks were icy. Nothing about him was aggressive. His voice was calm, polite, almost reassuring. And that's the scariest part. Because danger doesn't always look dangerous. Sometimes it looks like a guy politely waiting for you to agree. I stood there, frozen between two instincts. After that night, nothing felt ordinary anymore. Not my phone. Not my apartment. Not even silence. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. That weird things happen sometimes. That maybe it was just an unfortunate coincidence layered on top of another coincidence. That the human brain is good at connecting dots that were never meant to be connected. But fear doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly. Later that night, around 11, my phone buzzed. A message. From Rachel. Why didn't you come? For a second, I just stared at the screen. The restaurant lights were off in my apartment. The TV was muted, and the only sound in the room was my own breathing. Seeing her name pop up felt unreal, like a glitch. I replied honestly. I told her her brother came to the restaurant. I told her he said she was sick. I told her he tried to take me back to her place. The reply came instantly. I don't have a brother. That single sentence erased every rational explanation I had been clinging to. I typed back fast, explaining everything, what he looked like, what he said, how he knew my name. Then she stopped responding. No typing bubble. No explanation. Nothing. I assumed she was just as freaked out as I was. Maybe she needed time. Maybe she deleted the app. Maybe she didn't feel safe responding. I put my phone down and tried to sleep. That's when the notifications started. Around 1 in the morning, I got an alert that someone was trying to log into my email. Then my bank app. Then my Instagram. All within minutes of each other. My heart started pounding. I sat up in bed, the room suddenly feeling smaller. I changed my passwords. Turned on two-factor authentication. Locked everything down as fast as I could. At the time, I didn't fully connect it to Rachel. I wish I had. The next morning, the first thing I did was open Bumble. Her profile was gone. Not unmatched. Not blocked. Deleted. It was like she never existed. Around noon, I got a text from an unknown number. You should have come with me. I stared at the message until my vision blurred. I showed it to my roommate, trying to laugh it off even though my hands were shaking. He told me to block the number and report it. I blocked it. The messages didn't stop. They came from different numbers. Different area codes. Short, vague sentences. We saw you. Next time don't waste my time. You made this harder for yourself. One message used my full legal name. Not the name on Bumble. My real name. That's when fear stopped being abstract. That night, I was home alone. Around 10, there was a knock at my apartment door. I froze. I sat on the couch, heart racing, staring at the door like it might open itself. A minute passed. Then another knock, harder this time. I thought about calling the police. But it was only 2 knocks. I didn't want to sound paranoid. I walked slowly to the door and looked through the peephole. No one was there. The hallway was empty. I stepped back, my pulse still racing. A few seconds later, I heard heavy footsteps going down the stairs. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I called the restaurant. I asked if anyone matching the man's description had a reservation or checked in around the time I was there. They said no. I asked if anyone had been standing outside, looking in. The hostess hesitated, then told me one of the servers mentioned a man in a hoodie pacing back and forth outside the restaurant for almost an hour before I arrived. He never came inside. Not until he walked straight up to me. I hung up the phone feeling sick. Someone had been watching the entrance. Watching the timing. Waiting for the right moment. I contacted the police and gave them the number that texted me first. They couldn't trace it. And since no crime had technically been committed, there wasn't much they could do. I deleted Bumble. I changed my number. I changed every password again. For about a week, things were quiet. And then one night, while taking out the trash behind my apartment building, I saw something folded under the handle of the dumpster. It had my name on it. Inside was a printed photo. It was me, standing inside the restaurant lobby, looking down at my phone. The angle was from outside the window. On the back, in plain handwriting, it said, "You." That was the moment I understood something I still struggle to put into words. This wasn't about rejection. This wasn't about embarrassment. This wasn't about dating. This was about control. Someone had created a person from scratch. Someone had planned an outcome. And I disrupted it. I stopped staying at my apartment after that. Friends' couches. Spare rooms. Anywhere but alone. Eventually, the messages stopped. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they just stopped showing themselves. And the terrifying truth is, this wasn't the only story. Because I wasn't the only one. There's a very specific kind of fear that doesn't come from screams, or shadows, or things jumping out in the dark. It doesn't announce itself with violence or blood or anything you can point to and say, this is where it went wrong. It comes quietly. It comes from realizing that everything felt normal. Right up until it wasn't. From the moment you replay a conversation in your head and notice something small you dismissed, a pause that lasted too long, a question that didn't quite make sense, a detail they knew that you don't remember giving them. This isn't a story about monsters hiding in alleys or ghosts knocking on doors at midnight. This is a story about how easy it is to trust someone you've never met, about how natural it feels to open up when the other person seems kind, patient, familiar, when their words arrive exactly when you need them, when they laugh at the right moments, when they say the things that make you feel seen. We've grown comfortable talking to strangers through a screen. We share our routines, our favorite places, our frustrations, our loneliness, all without realizing that every detail is a piece of a map. And sometimes, someone is quietly drawing that map. This is a story about how dangerous it can be when someone decides to use that trust against you. Because the scariest part isn't what they do at the end. It's how long they wait. At first, there's nothing unusual. Just messages. Casual conversations that slowly become part of your day. A name lighting up your screen that you start to look forward to seeing. You tell yourself it's harmless. That everyone meets this way now. That nothing bad ever really happens to people like you. And that's the trap. Because nothing does happen. Not at first. They don't rush. They don't push. They don't cross lines too early. They let you relax. They let you trust. They let you believe that you're in control. But control was never yours. Somewhere along the way, the conversations shift. Not enough to raise alarms. Just enough to feel closer. More personal. More private. They ask about your schedule. When you're usually home. Which nights you go out. Which places you like because they're quiet. They remember everything. Things you forgot you mentioned. Things you didn't realize mattered. And when you finally decide to meet, it feels like a natural next step. Almost inevitable. You've already built a version of them in your head. A voice. A personality. A sense of who they are. You trust that version. What you don't realize is that the version you trust is the only real thing about them. The person behind it may not exist at all. Or worse, they exist very differently than you imagined. And the moment that illusion cracks, the fear doesn't explode. It sinks. It settles into your chest when something doesn't line up. When they're late. When an excuse feels rehearsed. When someone else shows up instead. That's when your instincts start whispering. And that whisper is easy to ignore. Because nothing has technically gone wrong yet. No crime. No threat. No proof. Just a feeling that you've stepped slightly off balance. But the truth is, the danger doesn't begin when something bad happens. It begins when you realize that someone has been watching you make choices you thought were your own. That they anticipated where you'd be. What you'd say. How you'd react. And they were counting on you to do exactly what you were supposed to do. Follow along. Stay polite. Don't make a scene. This is where most people convince themselves they're imagining things. That they're being dramatic. That it would be rude to leave. That it would be embarrassing to be wrong. Predators depend on that hesitation. Because the moment you hesitate, they know they still have time. And the story, the one you're about to hear, isn't about what happens when trust is broken. It's about what happens when trust was never real to begin with. When you realize, far too late, that the person you were talking to, the person you were getting to know, the person you thought you understood, was never who you thought they were. One telling me not to be rude. The other telling me that nothing about this made sense. When I finally said I'd rather reschedule and started walking toward the door, he stepped slightly into my path. Not forcefully. Just enough to stop me. He said Rachel would be upset. He said she specifically asked him to bring me. And then he just stared at me. When he finally stepped aside and told me to have a good night, the words didn't sound friendly. They sounded final. I left quickly. Locked my car immediately. And as I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw him standing outside the restaurant, watching me drive away. I told myself it was over. I was wrong. Because later that night, Rachel messaged me. And everything I thought I understood collapsed. Because Rachel didn't have a brother. Because Rachel stopped responding. Because Rachel disappeared. And because that's when I realized something terrifying. Rachel may never have existed at all. Someone created her. Someone built her personality. Someone waited to see if I would follow. And someone expected me to leave that restaurant with them. You were supposed to leave with them. There's a strange kind of trauma that comes from knowing how close you came to something worse. Nothing violent happened that night. No headlines. No police reports. And yet, I've never felt more shaken by an experience in my life. Because what haunts me isn't what happened. It's what almost happened. After the messages. After the login attempts. After the knocking on my door. After finding a photograph of myself taken without my knowledge. That photo still lives in my mind. Me standing inside the restaurant lobby, staring at my phone, unaware that someone was watching from outside. Waiting. Studying. Someone took the time to print it, fold it, leave it where I'd find it. That wasn't random. That was deliberate. Eventually, the messages stopped. The numbers went silent. The presence faded, or maybe just learned to stay hidden. And that's what truly terrifies me. Not knowing if it ever really ended, or if they simply decided to stop showing themselves. Every story you've heard tonight follows the same pattern. A match. A conversation. A sense of safety. And then something small breaks the illusion. A delay. An excuse. A request that doesn't feel right. And the moment you hesitate, the moment you say no, the moment you don't comply, everything changes. Rebecca didn't need help with her car. Michael wasn't who he claimed to be. Jenna was never a woman at all. Each situation escalated the moment trust failed. Because predators don't fear attention. They fear instinct. And here's the truth no dating app will ever warn you about. You don't owe anyone politeness. You don't owe anyone your time. You don't owe anyone access to your life. If something feels off, you're allowed to leave, even if you can't explain why. Especially if you can't explain why. I haven't used a dating app since. Maybe someday I will. Maybe I won't. But I know this for certain now. Someone out there is capable of creating an entire person just to get someone alone. Someone out there is patient enough to wait. And someone out there is counting on the fact that most people don't want to seem rude. I was supposed to disappear that night. The only reason I didn't is because I listened to the voice that told me to walk away. If you're listening to this right now, and something in your life doesn't feel right, trust that feeling. Because sometimes, the scariest stories aren't about monsters. They're about people who almost convinced you to follow them. And not everyone gets to walk away and tell the story. If you want next.